Emma Parker grew up in a small town in Ohio where people knew each other's business before the news could even reach the morning paper. From the outside, her life looked almost picture-perfect. She was married to Michael, her college sweetheart, and together they had built a beautiful home on Maplewood Lane. Michael worked as an engineer for a local firm while Emma dedicated herself to teaching at the elementary school. They had 2 children, Ethan and Lily, who were the pride of Emma's life. Anyone who saw them on Sundays walking into church or enjoying ice cream in the park would have thought they were the embodiment of the American dream. But beneath the surface of that polished life, Emma carried a secret. It started as something small, something she believed she could control, a fleeting mistake that she convinced herself would never see the light of day. She thought that if she buried it deep enough, if she played her part as a loving wife and devoted mother, the secret would never catch up to her. But secrets, as life often teaches, have a way of unraveling at the worst possible times. It all began 2 years earlier, during the summer when Michael had been assigned to work long hours on a major project. Emma often found herself alone, caring for the children and managing the household. At first, she managed well. But as weeks stretched into months, she felt a creeping loneliness that she struggled to admit even to herself. Friends invited her to gatherings, neighbors stopped by with small talk, but nothing seemed to fill the quiet emptiness that came with Michael's absence. That was when Emma grew closer to Daniel Miller, a family friend she had known casually for years. Daniel had recently gone through a difficult divorce, and his son attended the same school where Emma taught. Their conversations started innocently, quick exchanges about school schedules, homework, or community events. But slowly, the talks grew longer. Daniel would linger in the school parking lot, waiting to chat. Emma, feeling seen and understood in a way she hadn't in months, allowed those conversations to become part of her routine. It wasn't long before they were texting each other outside of school hours. At first, it was harmless, funny memes, updates about their kids, or jokes about small-town life. But then the messages shifted. Daniel began sharing his struggles with loneliness, and Emma found herself opening up about her own frustrations with Michael's long hours. The emotional connection deepened quickly, and soon Emma realized she was confiding in Daniel more than she was in her own husband. Emma told herself it was just friendship, but deep down, she knew she was crossing a line. Still, she believed she could manage it. She believed she could keep her 2 worlds separate, her perfect family life and the secret conversations with Daniel. What harm could it do, as long as no one ever found out? But the truth has a way of surfacing. One crisp autumn evening, Emma's carefully built walls began to crumble. She and Michael were hosting a dinner for a few friends and neighbors. The kids were playing in the backyard, laughter spilling in through the open windows, while the adults chatted in the dining room. Among the guests was Daniel. Though Emma had tried to keep her interactions with him discreet, Michael had insisted Daniel come, since they were all part of the same community. Throughout the evening, Emma found herself stealing glances at Daniel, silently praying no one noticed. But what she didn't realize was that Michael had already sensed something off in the past few weeks. He had noticed Emma smiling at her phone late at night, brushing off questions with vague answers. He had felt the distance growing between them, even if Emma had done everything she could to hide it. After the guests left that night, Michael confronted Emma. His voice was calm but steady, carrying the weight of suspicion. "Emma," he said, "is there something you're not telling me?" Emma froze, her mind racing. She wanted to deny everything, to reassure him that he was imagining things. But in that moment, something inside her cracked. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe it was the realization that she couldn't keep living with the lie. She admitted the truth, that she had grown close to Daniel, that the friendship had crossed lines it never should have. She insisted it had never gone further than conversations, but the damage was already done. Michael's face hardened, the hurt in his eyes deeper than any words could express. Trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to restore. In the weeks that followed, their home was filled with tension. Michael moved into the guest room. Conversations turned short and cold. Ethan and Lily sensed the change, asking questions Emma struggled to answer. She told herself she had protected them by keeping her secret, but now she saw the truth. Her silence had only delayed the inevitable pain. Eventually, Michael suggested counseling. Emma agreed, desperate to save her marriage. Sitting in that therapist's office, Emma faced the reality of her choices. She saw how her loneliness had driven her into dangerous territory, how her need for validation had cost her the trust of the man who had loved her for years. Counseling wasn't easy. There were tears, anger, and long stretches of silence. Michael wrestled with whether he could forgive, and Emma wrestled with whether she could forgive herself. Over time, small steps of healing began. Emma cut off contact with Daniel completely, blocking his number and avoiding places she knew he would be. She poured her energy into rebuilding her family, spending more time with Michael and the children. Michael, though still scarred, began to see her efforts. Slowly, cautiously, they started to find their way back to each other. But Emma never forgot the lesson. Secrets don't stay buried forever. They surface, and when they do, they change everything. She thought her secret was safe, but it nearly destroyed the life she had worked so hard to build. Years later, when she looked back, Emma would admit that her greatest mistake was not in the loneliness she felt but in how she chose to cope with it. She realized that real strength wasn't in hiding, but in honesty, speaking openly about her struggles before they grew into something destructive. Her story became a reminder, not just for herself but for others, that the truth, however painful, is always safer than a secret. Emma's journey wasn't perfect, but it was real. And though her marriage carried scars, it also carried resilience. She discovered that while secrets can tear a life apart, honesty, difficult and uncomfortable as it may be, can sometimes piece it back together.